At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to the story of a mountain where a hiker went missing in 1995. People began to talk about a virus called hill fever, but indigenous people refer to it as the mouth of the wolf. Now we meet a boy named Blake who is preparing to go hunting with his father, Grady. Once they are ready, they walk through the woods, and the father tells him about poisonous mushrooms and hunting, which Blake does not pay much attention to, leading to Grady scolding him. At that moment, a deer appears, and Grady takes aim, but it's already too late for a shot. As he turns around, he realizes that Blake is not with him because he has gone to find a better position for hunting. While aiming, he sees a creature in his sights that quickly disappears. He starts to walk slowly backward, and his father finds him, telling him not to stray too far away because it is dangerous. Then they hear a noise, and Grady tells his son to climb up into the treehouse while he keeps watch. They hide, and something is making a loud noise that leaves a mark there. They find a deer that has been torn apart, and Grady fails to shoot the creature the moment he sees it. After that, they safely arrive home, and the father tells the radio to notify others that he has seen the missing hiker. The hiker has the legs of a man and the face of a wolf, making him a wolfman. Now, 30 years later, Blake has aged and he has a daughter named Ginger. She is behaving very freely, jumping around when she encounters a crazy man whom Blake moves aside, and then he shouts at her, after which he apologizes. He then asks her to read his mind now, and she says that he is thinking, "I love my little girl," to which Blake replies that it's amazing how she always guesses what he thinks. At home, she uses lipstick on him, and we meet his wife, Charlotte, who comes home from work and gives him a certificate regarding his father's death. He addresses Charlotte, who is busy with an important conversation, and they begin a small argument because he is interrupting her. But it is understandable since his father has died, and he never really got to know him well because he left when he was old enough to leave. So the next time during her lunch break, Blake is waiting for her so they can talk and improve their relationship. He suggests visiting his father's farmhouse so they can connect better as a family over the weekend, and she agrees. For the weekend, they go to Oregon to visit his father's house, and while in the woods, they come across a path that is blocked. In that moment, they notice a man in a treehouse who is armed and approaches them. Charlotte doesn't like this and wants them to leave, but Blake thinks the situation is under control. It appears to be his old neighbor, Derek, who still lives here. He warns them not to stay here at night because there is no power. Also, he knows the way to his father's place and can help them, so they need to give him a ride. This doesn't sit well with Charlotte either, and she prefers to go to the back with Ginger rather than have a stranger sit with her. As they travel, it gets completely dark, and suddenly, someone appears in the middle of the road, causing Blake to change direction and crash into a tree. They all find themselves in the truck until Derek opens the door and falls out, badly hurt and unable to move. Blake gives instructions and helps them exit, and they find themselves outside when it's his turn to get out. He hears a terrifying sound nearby that approaches and shatters glass, after which it attacks and takes Derek. Blake uses the chance to break free and leads his family to safety in his old house. Since there is no electricity, he goes to the basement to turn on the generator for power. He returns upstairs and tucks his daughter into bed while calming her, and she again guesses what he is thinking, that he loves her. Then he has a conversation with Charlotte about what is happening and what threat they are facing. Their phone has no service, and Blake remembers that there is a radio his father used for communication, but it seems to have no connection right now. But in the room to the side, he smells something odd which prompts him to check. There, he finds meat, and when he tries it, his tooth immediately falls out. Charlotte helps him with the wound, during which she finds a huge cut on his arm that she bandages up. Later, as time passes, Blake starts to feel strange and sweats more than usual, becoming sensitive to noises. While Charlotte sleeps with Ginger, He goes upstairs to check on a sound coming from above, and there on the wall, he notices a spider while hearing its footsteps. At that moment, he begins to lose his balance and feels everything shifting around him. He steadies himself and goes to their room to tell them that someone is approaching. He goes to the door to listen when the wolfman grabs his leg and knocks him down, so Charlotte attacks him and helps Blake, who loses consciousness. When he wakes up, he hears his wife calling for help over the radio and goes to her, but he looks somewhat different and scary, trying to speak with her, but he can't communicate as if his mouth is sewn shut. His sickness is progressing really fast as he moves his fingers through his hair, which is falling out, and Charlotte brings him a note to write his thoughts, which tell him that he is dying. She comforts him that this is not the end and that they can fight it together, while he watches her, and his vision changes, causing him to lose understanding of words, and he doesn't comprehend any words she says. She also finds a wound on his arm that is bleeding. It appears that the wound she bandaged earlier is not healing and is instead spreading even more. At that moment, Blake withdraws and begins to scratch the wound on his arm, making it bleed more, and then he starts eating his arm, chewing his own flesh. Suddenly, his gaze turns to Charlotte, who is terrified and frozen in place, unable to move as she watches him pass by. She realizes that she must fend for herself and takes the keys and battery for the truck, exiting the house with them. Ginger sits in the front while Blake is in the back seat. Charlotte powers up the truck and is ready to leave, but the wolfman is already there, forcing them to leave the truck to him so they can run to the nearest place possible. They all climb up, and the wolfman breaks through, making this place no longer safe. Blake points to the house for them to hide while he becomes bait for the wolfman and jumps down to divert its attention, allowing them to enter the house safely. A moment later, Blake appears, and they let him inside where it is evident that his appearance has drastically changed. His daughter approaches him and asks what she thinks, to which she answers herself that she thinks, "I love Dad." He is just watching her, not understanding a word, and then he throws up blood. He immediately jumps and stands in front of Charlotte, looking closely at her face while she remains still. Blake moves back to the door, which he opens to go outside, but the wolfman appears and attacks him. They both begin to fight, with the wolfman overpowering Blake. Charlotte grabs a knife and stabs him in the back, causing him to turn towards her, but Blake steps in the way. He is weak and is defeated again, so Charlotte attacks on her own. But the third time luck is on their side, and Blake bites the wolfman's neck, killing him. On his arm, he sees a tattoo and recognizes him as Grady, his father. Blake looks lost, and outside his transformation into a full wolfman begins, where he loses all human feelings and becomes a beast. He no longer recognizes his family and appears in front of them, where Charlotte sees a creature that is no longer her husband. The wolfman finds an entrance above the house, breaking in to hunt his own family. Charlotte attacks him with a knife, and then they both run together to the barn, a place that promises safety. Inside, it is dark, and they see nothing ahead of them, while the wolfman appears who sees perfectly in the dark. He stands right in front of them and approaches them, stepping into a bear trap, where he remains as they move on. Trying to free himself, the wolfman chews off his foot and drags himself along the ground, beginning to chase them into the woods, running on all fours. Charlotte reaches their truck and sees only the hand left from Derek, where she finds his gun. Then they climb into the treehouse where the wolfman appears. He stands in front of them, and Charlotte contemplates whether to shoot, while he looks at Ginger with deep sighs. Suddenly, he attacks them, and a shot is fired, causing him to fall. They approach him, and soon Blake dies as they mourn for him. They find their way out of the woods on foot, stopping to look back as the movie ends.